The last train had already screamed through, and the platform felt hollow, the kind of quiet that makes every drip from the ceiling sound too loud. Elena Park limped along the yellow line, one hand on the railing, the other hugging a canvas bag to her chest. Her left ankle had turned on a wet tile near the stairs. Pain climbed her leg in a hot pulse. A man in a dark cap stayed a few steps behind her, not close enough to touch, but close enough to make the air feel smaller. When she glanced back, he did not look away. At the far end, a little girl's voice broke the echo. "Dad, is she okay?" The girl stood with a worn sketchbook pressed to her sweater. Beside her was a man with work-tired eyes and a coat that smelled faintly of onion and steam. He was tall without trying to be, the kind of solid that made the space steadier. He took in the scene the way a person does when the first instinct is care, not panic. He guided his daughter behind the pillar and spoke in a tone meant for stormy nights and scared strangers. "Ma'am," he said to Elena, gentle but clear, "I'm going to help you. I'm not coming close yet. I'm walking toward the call box to get a guard." He turned his head just enough for the man in the cap to hear. "You should step back." The man in the cap hesitated, lips pressed to a thin line. The father pressed the help button, gave the location, repeated it, kept his voice level like he had done it before. He did not posture. He did not raise his fists. He simply stood in the open, body angled between Elena and the stranger, eyes steady with a kind of quiet that says, "I am not leaving." A transit guard's footsteps came fast down the stairs. The man in the cap slid into the shadow and was gone before the guard's radio crackled. Elena let the railing hold her as relief and pain arrived together. The little girl peeked from behind the pillar with a face too honest to fake bravery. "Hey there," the father told her. "Look back behind me, remember?" She nodded, small and serious, and tucked the sketchbook under her arm like it was a promise she had to keep. They rode the elevator up, the guard walking ahead to check the corners. Outside, the street smelled like rain and steel. The father offered his arm and Elena took it because standing proud made no sense when the ground would not listen. His daughter walked on Elena's uninjured side, tiny steps matching Elena's uneven pace. Their apartment was not far, a box of warmth tucked above a row of shops that had shut their eyes for the night. Inside was the slow comfort of a place kept clean by hands that are always busy. Shoes lined by the door, a dish towel drying on the oven handle, a drawing of 3 stick figures taped to the fridge with a crooked strip of blue tape. He said his name was Noah, his daughter was Maya. He set Elena on the couch, lifted her foot onto a folded blanket, and fetched a bowl of ice and a roll of elastic bandage from a drawer that had seen a lot of real life. "We're going to bring the swelling down," he said, like a steady rain. "Ice, elevation, a little pressure. I'll make tea. Ginger helps more than folks expect." Elena tried to apologize for taking up space. Her voice frayed on the first word. Noah did not let her finish. "You're here, that's enough," he said, and went to the small stove. The kettle sounded like a sigh when it began to warm. Maya stood near the coffee table, set down her sketchbook, and slid a crayon from the box, then put it back. She looked at Elena's face the way children do when they are trying to decide if you are safe. "Does your ankle hurt like when I fell at the pool?" she asked, soft as a blanket. "A little," Elena said, the truth easier than the brave face she usually wore. "We can sit still together then," Maya replied, as if it were the simplest plan in the world, and shuffled closer until her shoulder touched Elena's sleeve. The tea came strong and sharp with ginger. Noah wrapped Elena's ankle with slow patience, checked the color in her toes, asked if the pressure felt right. He did not hover or stare. He respected the distance the way a person respects water after a storm. He noticed her canvas bag never left her lap. She noticed he kept glancing down at a wrinkled notice stuck to the corner of a bulletin board by the kitchen. Some kind of bill that could not be ignored forever. Life spoke softly in that room, the low hum of the fridge, the kettle cooling, the tiny hiss of melting ice. When the pain dulled to something she could breathe around, Elena took in the space more fully. On the fridge was a sticky note in neat block letters, "Change ice every 2 hours." Beside it, another, Maya's spelling list. Tucked near the stove was a stack of clean takeout containers waiting to be washed and used again. On the window ledge sat a small plant that had decided, against the odds, to keep living. It felt nothing like the places where Elena had spent most of her days. Those rooms had glossy tables and windows that stared down at the city. They were built for power and presentation. This room was built for staying, for ordinary nights, for small rituals that make you remember you are a person. She felt something ease in her chest, a knot loosening without permission. She took a breath that tasted like ginger and rain. Maya tugged Noah's sleeve and whispered, which meant she wanted to say it but did not want to be rude. He nodded, then looked at Elena. "We have an extra blanket if you want to rest a bit," he said. "You can keep the foot up. I'll set a timer and change the ice before the pain gets ahead of us." He slipped into the kitchen again, scribbled something on a small square of paper, and stuck it to the fridge. Elena read it and felt tears push up before she could fight them back. The note said, in that same careful hand, "You are safe here tonight. No expectations. Sleep if you can." She pressed her palm over her mouth, embarrassed at her own relief. "Thank you," she managed. The words felt too small. Noah waved it off like he was swatting a fly. "Happens more than people think," he said. "A bad turn on a wet floor, somebody following too close. We'll file a report in the morning. For now, ice and rest." He turned down the lamp and the room softened to a gentle glow. Maya carried over her sketchbook and set it on the table in front of Elena like a gift. On the page was a drawing of a train platform with 3 figures. One was small, one was tall, and one stood with a hand on the railing. The tall one had a little speech bubble that said, "We are staying." Elena swallowed hard. She reached into her canvas bag and pulled it closer as if it could slow her pulse by sitting near her ribs. Her fingers brushed something small and solid inside, something that had started all of this. She knew she could not keep it hidden for long, not after the way this night had unfolded, not after the steady way this stranger had chosen to stand between her and fear. She looked up, and Noah was watching her with that same patient calm, as if he understood that people carry more than what you can see. "I need to tell you something," she said, voice low. "It might sound strange." He sat on the other end of the couch, not crowding her, hands resting open on his knees. "All right," he said. "Tell me what you can." She drew a breath, felt the ache in her ankle and the warmth of the ginger, and finally loosened her grip on the bag. But Noah had no idea the next thing she would say would change everything. The morning light crept through thin curtains, painting soft lines across the worn floor. A faint smell of coffee drifted through the air, rich, a little burnt, but comforting. Elena blinked awake on the couch, momentarily unsure of where she was. Then she saw the post-it note on the fridge, still there in Noah's careful handwriting. "You're safe here tonight." For a brief second, she believed it. Her ankle throbbed when she tried to shift, but the swelling had gone down a little. On the coffee table sat a mug of water, a plate with a slice of toast, and a small drawing, crayon hearts, and stick figures holding hands. Maya had written "Get well soon" in big, uneven letters. In the kitchen, Noah stood at the stove in his diner uniform, flipping eggs with one hand and holding his phone between shoulder and ear. "Yeah, put me down for the breakfast shift too," he said. His voice was tired but calm. "Yeah, I can handle double today." He hung up and turned, surprised to see Elena awake. "Morning," he said. "You slept through the sirens, that's a skill around here." Elena tried to sit up, wincing. "I should go," she murmured. "You've already done too much." Noah shook his head. "You're not walking anywhere on that ankle. Besides, you said you needed to tell me something." He poured coffee into a chipped mug and handed it to her. "You can start there." She hesitated, fingers tightening around the warm ceramic. "It's complicated," she said quietly. "And it's not really your problem." He leaned against the counter. "You got chased through a subway station last night. It's kind of everyone's problem now." She stared down at the steam curling up from the mug. "I used to work for a tech firm," she began. "They handled personal data, apps, smart devices, consent forms that nobody really read." Her voice trembled. "I found out we were collecting more than people agreed to. Selling it even. I refused to sign off on a new update that crossed the line. The next day, someone broke into my office, then, that man started following me." Noah stayed silent, listening. There was no shock on his face, just quiet focus. He'd seen enough of the world to know that truth often came wrapped in things people didn't want to hear. "So that drive in your bag," he said slowly, "it's proof?" She nodded. "Why didn't you go to the police?" "I did," she said. "Twice. They said it sounded like a corporate dispute. The firm's lawyers made me look unstable." From the hallway, the small creak of a door broke the silence. Maya appeared in her pajamas, hair wild from sleep, clutching her sketchbook. She looked at Elena's ankle and frowned. "Did the ice melt?" Elena smiled gently. "I think it did." Maya disappeared for a moment and came back with a fresh pack from the freezer, carrying it carefully with both hands like something precious. "Daddy says it helps if you stay still," she said proudly. "That's good advice," Elena whispered. Noah glanced at the clock. "I've got to head to the diner," he said. "Morning crowd waits for no one." Maya, remember the rules, no opening the door, and you call if you need me. He looked at Elena. There's soup in the fridge, I'll be back before noon. If you're feeling okay, we can go to the station to file the report together. Elena wanted to argue, to say she didn't want to drag them into her mess, but the steadiness in his tone left no room for protest. When the door closed behind him, the apartment fell quiet again. The city's heartbeat pulsed faintly through the walls, the hum of buses, distant sirens, the neighbor's radio playing an old love song. Elena exhaled slowly. It had been a long time since someone had told her what to do without wanting something in return. She looked at Maya, who was sitting cross-legged on the floor, drawing intently. "What are you making?" "A picture of the train," Maya said without looking up. "Only this time, no scary man, just you and Daddy and me. We're waiting for the next one together." Elena's chest tightened. "That sounds like a better ending," she said softly. Maya nodded, serious. "Daddy says when you fix a bad story, you draw a new one over it." Hours later, when Noah returned, his apron still smelling of coffee and grease, he found Elena standing carefully on one foot near the window holding her phone. "They posted it," she said, voice shaking. "A picture of me from the station last night. The caption says, 'Disgraced lawyer seen hiding after data scandal.'" Noah read it, jaw tightening. "So they're spinning it first," he muttered. "They always do," she whispered, "and the more I speak, the worse it gets." He took a breath, then handed her his coat. "Come on," he said. "We're going to the precinct anyway. You tell them everything. I'll stay right beside you." She looked at him, searching for any sign of hesitation. There wasn't any. Outside, the afternoon had turned gray, the kind of sky that promised more rain. Maya walked between them, her small hand slipping into Elena's. For the first time in a long time, Elena didn't feel like she was running. She was walking, slowly, painfully, but toward something that might actually make sense. And as they turned down the block toward the precinct door, a black sedan rolled past the curb, crawling just slow enough for its engine to be heard. Elena froze. The window was half down. A man in a dark cap was behind the wheel. Maya's grip tightened. Noah's voice dropped low. "Keep walking," he said. "Just keep walking." But what waited at the end of that sidewalk would test every ounce of courage they had left. The police station was colder than the street outside. Not because of the air, but because of the way people looked at one another. Tired, half listening, half somewhere else. A fluorescent light flickered above the desk where an officer tapped at a computer, the keys clicking like impatient fingers. Noah stood beside Elena while Maya waited on a bench near the vending machine, sketching quietly with her crayons. Elena handed over the small envelope that held the printed screenshots, the evidence she still had from her time at the firm. The officer, a man about Noah's age, glanced through it without much expression. "You said someone followed you?" he asked. "Yes," Elena said. "Last night at the subway." He typed something into the computer. "You have a name?" "No," she said. "But he drove a black sedan, Pennsylvania plates. I didn't catch the number." The officer sighed through his nose. "Okay, we'll log it. If he shows up again, call 911. You can also file a harassment report online." "That's it?" Noah asked. "For now," the officer said, shrugging. "You could talk to your company's HR or legal team if it's a workplace dispute." Elena tried to hold her composure. "They're the ones sending him," she said softly. The officer paused for half a second, then turned back to the screen. "Look, ma'am, I get that this feels serious, but unless he makes direct contact again, there's not much we can do." He printed the report, slid it across the counter, and pointed where she should sign. The paper was thin, the kind that crumples if you breathe too hard. Noah took the copy for her. "We'll keep it," he said, folding it neatly into his jacket pocket. His tone wasn't angry, just final, like someone who'd already learned not to expect much help from systems built on tired faces and overfilled forms. Outside, the wind had picked up. The black sedan was gone, but every parked car looked the same for a moment. Maya clung to Elena's hand. "Can we go home now?" she asked, her voice small against the noise of traffic. "Yeah, sweetheart," Noah said. "We're done here." Back at the apartment, the afternoon light slanted gold across the living room. Maya settled at the table with her crayons while Noah reheated soup on the stove. Elena sat on the couch, holding the police report in her lap. It looked too clean, too official, too empty. "Do you ever get used to not being believed?" she asked quietly. Noah stirred the pot. "Not really," he said. You just learn to believe yourself louder." She looked up at him. "Has that happened to you?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Once. When I came back from deployment, I told people I was having trouble sleeping, seeing things that weren't there. They said it was stress. I believed them until it almost broke me. After that, I stopped asking for permission to tell the truth. His words hung in the air between them. There was no pity in his voice, only experience, the kind that makes you steadier, not colder. Elena felt something settle in her chest, a quiet kind of trust. Then came the knock, 3 sharp raps on the door. Noah's eyes flicked toward the peephole. A delivery man stood there holding a plain envelope. No name, just an address written in careful block letters. Noah took it, thanked him, and locked the door again. Inside the envelope was a folded newspaper clipping, an article from a business blog about the data firm Elena had worked for. The headline read, "Former employee spreads false claims, investigation pending." Elena's breath caught. "They're already turning it on me," she whispered. Noah read the article twice, then looked at her. "They're trying to scare you quiet." "It's working," she said, her voice cracked. "They can ruin me in a day. They have PR teams, lawyers, everything. You have a story," that he interrupted gently. "And the truth usually takes longer, but it lasts." From the table, Maya looked up from her drawing. "Who's that from?" she asked. Elena forced a smile. "Just something I needed to see." Maya frowned. "It doesn't look nice." "It's not," Noah said, "but we're not going to let it decide what happens next." Elena stared at the folded paper for a long time. The words blurred as her eyes filled. She wanted to be brave, but fear has a way of whispering louder when the room goes quiet. She placed the envelope on the table beside Maya's crayons and said, "Maybe you can draw over it. Make it something else." Maya's face brightened. Okay," she said. She spread the paper flat and began covering the harsh black letters with purple clouds and orange suns until the story looked almost harmless again. When night came, Noah walked her to the corner store for air. The city lights flickered in puddles, reflecting pieces of color from neon signs. "You don't have to keep protecting everyone," he said as they crossed the street. Elena looked down at the wrapped ankle, now firm but still sore. "I don't know how to stop," she admitted. "You start small," he said. "You let somebody stand beside you." The words were simple, but they hit deep. She nodded, unable to speak. When they turned the corner, headlights flashed across their path. A black sedan rolled out from the curb and stopped at the red light. For a moment, the driver's face caught the glow, calm, deliberate, watching. Noah's jaw clenched. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and hit record. "License plate 483 Dure," he said under his breath. He spoke it out loud, steady and clear, making sure the camera caught the numbers. He stepped forward, staying between Elena and the car. The light turned green. The sedan pulled away, disappearing into traffic, leaving behind a swirl of exhaust and the sound of Noah's voice, still calm but full of steel. He lowered the phone and turned to her. "We're not running anymore," he said. "Next time he shows up, we'll have proof." Elena looked at him, really looked, and realized that for the first time in months, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, protected, not as someone to be saved, but as someone worth standing beside. And yet, as they headed home, the reflection of those headlights stayed in her mind. Because deep down, she knew the man in that car wasn't finished, and the next time he came back, it wouldn't just be to watch. The next morning came gray and restless. The sky hung low, swollen with clouds that hadn't decided whether to break. In Noah's kitchen, the smell of oatmeal and cinnamon filled the air, simple and quiet. Elena sat at the small table, her laptop open, the police report spread beside it. She had hardly slept. Every time a car passed outside, her chest tightened. Maya, sitting on her knees at the chair across from her, was cutting shapes out of colored paper. "This one's a house," she said proudly, holding up a lopsided square. "So you remember where home is?" Elena smiled, tired but grateful. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." Maya grinned, gluing it onto a page full of mismatched colors. "Daddy says every picture needs something bright, even if the day's dark." Noah came in with his jacket half-zipped, eyes heavy from another late shift. "You okay to rest today?" he asked Elena. She hesitated. "I need to check something first." "What's that?" "My email. If the company's already leaking stories, I need to know how bad it is." He frowned. "You sure that's a good idea right now?" "No," she said softly, "but hiding won't stop them." Her hand shook as she logged in. There were dozens of messages, some from journalists, others from strangers. The subject lines were sharp enough to cut: traitor, hypocrite, liar. She scrolled through a few before closing the screen. Her throat felt tight. "They're spreading it everywhere," she whispered. Noah pulled out a chair and sat beside her. "You can't fight noise with more noise," he said quietly. "You fight it with truth, small, steady, and real." Elena blinked back tears. "You make it sound simple." "It's not," he admitted. "It's how I've survived." Before either of them could say more, a knock came at the door. Not loud, just enough to make everyone freeze. Maya looked up, sensing the change in the air. Noah motioned for her to stay put and walked slowly to the door. He checked the peephole, then let out a small breath. "It's just Ms. Alvarez," he said, opening it. Their elderly neighbor stood there with a grocery bag and a scowl that could cut through concrete. "You forgot your mail again, Mr. Reed," she said, setting the bag down. "And I brought soup, the good kind, with beans." She noticed Elena and smiled kindly. "Ah, you're the lady from the other night. I saw that story online. Nonsense. People love a scandal more than the truth." Elena tried to thank her, but her voice wavered. Ms. Alvarez gave her a look only grandmothers can give, half stern, half soft. "Don't let fools tell your story for you, mija," she said. "They'll always make it smaller." Then she turned to go, muttering about needing to catch the mailman before he forgot her package again. When the door closed, Maya whispered, "She's scary nice." Noah chuckled. "That's exactly right." Elena stared at the mail Ms. Alvarez had brought. Among the envelopes was one without a return address. Her stomach sank as she recognized the typewriter font. It was the same as the clipping from yesterday. She opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Return what isn't yours." Noah's face hardened. "Same person," he said. She nodded. "They know where I am." "How? I never used your name when I called the police." Elena swallowed. Maybe they traced the subway footage, or maybe someone at the station talked. Maya looked up from her crafts, eyes wide. "Is it the man from the train?" Elena forced a smile. "I don't know, honey, but we're safe here." Noah crouched beside her, voice steady. "You hear that? Safe. That's the rule in this house." Later, when Maya napped on the couch, Noah and Elena sat by the window, the letter between them. Rain had started again, tapping gently against the glass. "They won't stop," she said quietly. "They'll keep twisting everything until I break." Noah shook his head. "Then we don't break. We keep records, take photos, call it in every time. We stay boring and stubborn. That's how you win against people like this." She smiled faintly. "You make stubborn sound noble." "It is," he said. "Most good things are just stubborn done right." For the first time that day, she laughed, a small, surprised sound that filled the room in a way words couldn't. As evening settled, she tried to cook dinner to repay him. It didn't go as planned. The pasta stuck together, the sauce burned slightly, and the smoke alarm screamed like it had opinions. Noah rushed in, waving a towel. Maya clapped her hands, delighted. "We're having smoky spaghetti," she announced. They laughed until their stomachs hurt. For a moment, the fear faded, replaced by something warm and ordinary. After dinner, they sat together in the quiet that follows laughter, the kind that feels like exhaling after holding your breath too long. Elena's eyes drifted toward the letter still on the counter. "They want me to give up the evidence," she said softly. "But if I do, they win." Noah nodded. "Then you hold on. You've already come this far." She looked at him, the light catching the tired kindness in his face. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "Because once someone helped me when I didn't think I deserved it," he said simply. "And because my daughter's watching how I treat people." Elena's eyes stung. "You're teaching her well." "She's teaching me too," he said, smiling. They sat in that fragile peace, the rain easing outside, the air still carrying the faint smell of burnt sauce. It felt almost safe, almost. But just as they started clearing the table, a soft thud came from the door. Not a knock this time, just something sliding under it. A white envelope damp from the rain. Noah picked it up slowly, heart tightening as he turned it over. No return address, no name, just 5 words typed in the same mechanical font. "You're not as hidden as you think." And before either of them spoke, headlights flashed briefly across the window, then vanished into the dark street below. The letter lay on the counter like it was breathing, the ink still damp from the rain. Noah read the words again. "You're not as hidden as you think." He said nothing for a long moment. Outside, thunder rolled far away, low and uncertain. Elena stood near the window, arms crossed tight, watching shadows move between parked cars. "I can't stay here," she whispered. "Yes, you can," Noah said, quiet but firm. "You're not running again." "They found me, Noah. That means they know about you, about Maya." He shook his head. "They won't touch us. I've dealt with worse." She looked at him, eyes filling with a kind of disbelief that came from years of being let down by people who promised things they couldn't keep. "You don't even know what they're capable of." "I don't need to," he said. "Fear makes people careless. We're not careless." Maya appeared at the hallway door, rubbing her eyes, clutching the stuffed rabbit she took everywhere. "Is it the bad man again?" she asked. Noah turned, softening instantly. No, honey, just some mail for grown-ups. She frowned. It doesn't sound like a nice letter. It isn't, Elena said gently, but we'll take care of it. After putting Maya back to bed, Noah went outside to check the hallway. The steps creaked under his boots, the air smelled faintly of rain and old wood. A few doors down, Ms. Alvarez's apartment light was still on. She was standing in her doorway with a laundry basket and a look that said she'd already seen more than she wanted to. "You got visitors?" she asked. "Something like that," Noah said. She lowered the basket, voice dropping. "I saw a man standing by the streetlight about an hour ago, tall, dark jacket, didn't look lost." "Did you get a look at his face?" "Not clear, but he wasn't waiting for a bus, I can tell you that." She hesitated, then added, "My son used to be a cop. I can call him, see if he can pull the plate numbers from the neighborhood camera." Noah nodded slowly. "I'd appreciate that." "Don't thank me yet," she said. "Just promise you'll keep that little girl away from the windows tonight." When he went back inside, Elena was sitting on the couch, her hands shaking. "You should let me leave," she said. "I'm making this worse." He sat beside her, elbows on his knees. "You think running fixes things? I used to believe that too." "What changed?" He took a deep breath. "I learned that some battles only end when you stop trying to fight alone." For a moment, neither spoke. The rain started again, softer this time, a rhythm that filled the silence. Noah reached for the envelope, slipped it into a plastic sandwich bag, and sealed it. "We'll hand this to the detective tomorrow," he said. "Let them trace the paper, the ink, whatever they can, but tonight we sleep." Elena nodded, though she knew sleep would be hard to find. She leaned back on the couch, watching him move around the kitchen, checking locks, closing blinds, unplugging the kettle. Everything he did was methodical, steady, almost calming. There was something about the way he carried fear, not with denial, but with discipline. She whispered, half to herself, "You've done this before." He looked up, one hand on the light switch. "Something like it," he said. "Old habits." She wanted to ask what he meant, but the exhaustion finally began to catch up with her. The next morning, the world looked ordinary again, too ordinary for what had happened. Maya sat at the table eating cereal while Noah sorted through the mail. Ms. Alvarez knocked a little later, her face pale. "My son pulled the footage," she said. "That car was parked outside since midnight. The plate traces back to a private security firm downtown." She handed Noah a small note with a name and an address. "You might want to give this to the police, or better yet, to someone who'll actually listen." Noah thanked her, then looked at Elena. "We're going," he said. "To the station?" "No," he said. "First, we make a copy of what's on that drive. If they want it this bad, you're not walking into another office without a backup." They drove to a small library on the east side of town. The computers there were old, the kind that hummed even when idle. Noah stood watch near the window while Elena plugged in the USB. The files loaded slowly, rows of emails, legal memos, and one document titled User Consent Optimization Strategy. She clicked it open. There, buried in the lines of code and marketing notes, were test results showing how the company had intentionally made decline buttons nearly invisible on mobile screens. "This is it," she whispered. This proves they knew." "Copy everything," Noah said. She nodded, moving fast, but halfway through, a small pop-up appeared. "Error. File locked by remote access." Her heart froze. "Someone's in the system," she said. "Unplug it," Noah ordered. She yanked the drive free just as the screen flickered and went black. The librarian looked over. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," Noah said quickly. "Just a bad cable." He guided Elena out of the building, his hand steady on her back. In the parking lot, he checked the rearview mirror twice before starting the engine. "They're tracking you," he said. Elena stared out the window, voice barely there. "Then they won't stop." "No," he said, "but neither will we." They drove in silence, the city sliding past, brick buildings, half-empty sidewalks, the hum of life that goes on no matter whose world is falling apart. When they pulled up near the apartment, Ms. Alvarez was outside sweeping her porch, her small dog yapping at the wind. She looked up as they parked. "You two should come inside for coffee," she said. "It's safer with company." Noah smiled faintly. "We'll take you up on that." Inside her warm, cluttered living room, the smell of fresh coffee mixed with old books and lemon polish. Ms. Alvarez handed Elena a cup and nodded toward the envelope Noah still carried in his jacket. "Keep that, and if anyone comes asking about her, you tell them the old lady downstairs saw everything." Elena met her eyes, overwhelmed. "Why would you risk that?" Ms. Alvarez smiled, her wrinkles deepening. "Because good people are rare, and when they find each other, they don't hide." Elena looked around the small sunlit room, the framed photos, the cross by the door, the quiet courage in the air, and realized she wasn't alone anymore. For the first time, her fear felt shared, smaller somehow. But as they left the apartment and stepped back into the hall, Noah's phone buzzed. An unknown number, he answered, cautious. A voice on the other end was low, deliberate, and familiar. "You shouldn't have gone to the library," the man said. "Next time we won't just watch." The line went dead. Noah stood frozen, the color draining from his face. Elena's pulse quickened as she saw his expression. He looked at her, calm but deadly serious. "They know where we were." And somewhere deep inside her, a quiet certainty formed. This wasn't just about files or data anymore. It was personal, and the man behind it all knew exactly who she was. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Every creak in the hallway made Elena flinch, and even Noah, calm as ever, sat awake on the couch with the phone in his hand, waiting for it to buzz again. It didn't. The silence that followed was almost worse. By morning, the apartment felt smaller, like the walls were listening. The air carried that heavy stillness of people trying too hard to pretend everything was fine. Maya colored quietly at the table, but even her crayons moved slower than usual. She kept glancing up at her dad, who hadn't taken off his jacket yet. "Daddy," she said finally, "so you didn't sleep." He smiled softly, trying to hide the truth. "Some nights are longer than others, kiddo." "Did you dream bad?" He paused, looking at her serious little face. "No," he said. "Just stayed up to make sure the good dreams could happen." Elena sat across from them, stirring a cup of coffee she hadn't tasted. "You should let me go," she said. "If I leave the city, they'll stop calling." Noah shook his head. "They don't stop because you run. They stop when people start paying attention." She frowned. "You really think anyone's going to listen? I'm just one person against $1 billion machine." He leaned back, arms crossed. "Machines break all the time. Usually because one piece refuses to move the way it's told." Before she could answer, a knock came at the door. 3 short taps, steady. Noah moved quietly, checking the peephole. Then he opened it. A woman stood there in a long coat, holding a badge. "Elena Park?" she asked. "I'm Detective Hale. You filed a harassment report 3 days ago?" Elena froze. "Yes." "I need to ask you a few more questions," the detective said. "Mind if I come in?" Inside, she looked around the small apartment, noting the damp letter on the counter sealed in plastic. "You've been receiving threats?" Elena nodded. "And calls. No number, just silence." Detective Hale glanced at Noah. "And you're, Noah Reed," he said. "I was with her the night of the subway incident." "Good," the detective replied, scribbling in her notebook. "We pulled street footage from that night. The man following you isn't random. He's registered to a private firm, Langley Protective Services. Ring a bell?" Elena's heart dropped. "Langley?" she repeated. "That's the same firm my company hired for executive security." The detective nodded. "Then you know why I'm here. Someone from your old office is paying them off the books. It's not an official assignment, it's intimidation." Noah clenched his jaw. "Can you stop them?" "Not without a warrant," she said, "but we can make noise. If they think the police are watching, they might back off." She handed Elena her card. "In the meantime, don't travel alone. Keep a record of every message, every sighting, and if anything escalates, call me directly." When the detective left, the silence returned, heavier than before. Elena turned to Noah, pale. "Langley's owned by David Larkin," she said quietly. "He used to run compliance at the firm. I worked under him." Noah frowned. "He's the one behind this?" "Maybe not directly," she said, but he's protecting whoever is. He's been cleaning up their messes for years." She pulled the USB from her pocket and set it on the table. "This drive isn't just proof of data misuse. There are internal memos, signatures. If this goes public, David loses everything." Noah looked at her, realization dawning. "That's why they're after you." "Yes," she said. "And if he knows I gave a copy to anyone—" Her voice trailed off, but the fear in her eyes finished the sentence for her. That afternoon, Ms. Alvarez stopped by again, carrying her dog in one arm and a tin of cookies in the other. "You two look like you've seen ghosts," she said. "Eat something sweet before you start planning revenge." Noah chuckled softly. "It's not revenge, ma'am. It's survival." "Same thing some days," she said, setting the tin down. She noticed the detective's card on the table and nodded. "Good, you're not doing this alone." Later, when Maya had gone to bed and the rain started again, Noah sat by the window staring at the streetlights. "You know," he said, "that detective showing up, someone must have pushed your case up the ladder. Reports don't get reopened like that without reason. Elena looked up from the couch. You think someone's helping us? Could be, he said. Or someone's watching how you'll react. She sighed, rubbing her temples. I'm tired of living like a headline. You won't be, he said. You'll live like a person again, but not if you give that drive up. Her fingers brushed the small USB where it sat near the lamp. If I keep it, people get hurt, she said quietly. And if you don't, nothing changes, he said. There's a difference between being careful and being silent. The clock ticked softly in the background. Outside, a car passed, headlights washing briefly through the curtains before fading again. Then Elena's phone buzzed, a new message, no name, just one sentence. You talk, and the next visit won't be a warning. Her hands shook. Noah reached for the phone and read it. They're losing control, he said. Threats mean they're nervous. They mean they're close, she whispered. He looked at her for a long time. Then maybe it's time we stop waiting for them to make the next move. What do you mean? I mean, he said, voice low and certain, we find a place where they can't hide. Somewhere your truth actually matters, a council hearing, a community forum, something public. Elena frowned. Those things take weeks to schedule. Maybe not, he said. My mom's old union rep sits on the city ethics board. If we can get on their docket, even for 5 minutes, you can tell your story on record, it'll force their hand. She blinked, stunned. You'd really do that for me? He smiled, weary but sure. For you, for Maya, for anyone they think they can scare into silence. The rain outside softened to a hush. For the first time in days, the air in the apartment felt lighter, like maybe there was a way forward after all. But just as Elena started to believe it, her phone lit up again. A new message, from a different number this time. You're not the only one with something to lose. Noah saw the color drain from her face. What is it? He asked. Her voice broke as she read the rest aloud, barely above a whisper. They sent a picture of Maya outside the diner. Noah's blood ran cold. He took the phone, eyes hardening as he stared at the image. They've crossed a line, he said quietly. And now they're going to regret it. Noah didn't say a word for a long time. He just stood there, holding the phone like it might burn through his hand. The image on the screen showed Maya outside the diner, her backpack slung over one shoulder, sunlight glinting off her curls. It wasn't zoomed in or edited, it was ordinary, too ordinary, and that was what made it terrifying. Elena's voice trembled. They're watching your daughter because of me. Noah's jaw tightened. No, they're watching because they think fear gives them power. She shook her head, tears welling. I never wanted this to touch her. I should have stayed gone. He turned to her, steady and sure. Don't you dare blame yourself for their choices. Maya stirred in the hallway, rubbing her eyes. Why are you yelling? Noah crouched down quickly, smoothing his voice. Just talking, kiddo. Nothing for you to worry about. But Maya was sharp. She looked at the phone in his hand. Is that about the bad man again? Elena's throat tightened. Yes, sweetheart, but we're fixing it. Maya frowned. Then fix it loud, she said simply before padding back to her room. Her words hit harder than any threat. Noah exhaled slowly. She's right, he said, like we do this loud, public, they can't silence what everyone can see. He called his mother that night, the kind of late call that wakes old instincts. Mom, it's Noah, he said. I need a favor. You still know folks on the city council? His mother's voice, warm but sharp, came through the crackle. That depends. Is this about trouble or justice? Both, he admitted. A pause, then it's worth it. Come by tomorrow. I'll make some calls. Elena listened from the couch, clutching her mug so tightly her knuckles whitened. You'd really put your family in this? They already are, he said, like we just haven't fought back yet. The next day, they drove to the edge of town where his mother lived, a quiet street lined with maple trees and front porches that still flew flags. Ms. Reed was small, silver-haired, and carried the calm of someone who'd seen a lot and stopped being impressed by fear. She hugged Noah like he was still her boy, then turned to Elena. You're the one they're chasing, she said, not as an accusation but as a fact. Good, that means you scared the right people. Elena managed a smile, unsure whether to laugh or cry. I didn't mean to scare anyone. Decent folks never do, Ms. Reed said, waving them inside. Over strong coffee and too many cookies, they explained everything. Ms. Reed listened without interruption, tapping her pen against a notepad. When they finished, she looked up. City's holding a public ethics hearing this week. It's supposed to be about housing contracts, but if we push, they'll let you speak. 5 minutes, maybe less. Elena blinked. 5 minutes? Long enough for truth, Ms. Reed said. Short enough that they can't cut you off. That night, back at the apartment, Elena sat at the kitchen table with the USB drive and a half-empty cup of tea. She'd written statements before, polished ones, strategic ones, words crafted to sound right but never to feel real. This one was different. She didn't write to win. She wrote because staying silent hurt worse.
Noah joined her, setting down a folder. What's that? She asked. Copies, he said. One for the detective,
one for the hearing, one for me to hide somewhere they'll never find. You've done this before, she said softly. He smiled faintly. Old habits die hard. The next morning, as they walked out to the truck, the air carried that tense quiet before rain. Maya skipped ahead, her backpack bouncing. Elena caught sight of something on the windshield, a note tucked under the wiper. Her stomach twisted as she pulled it free. In the same neat mechanical font, we warned you, last chance. Noah read it, then crumpled it in his fist. They're trying to shake us before the hearing. And it's working, she admitted, her voice shaking. I can barely breathe. He stepped closer, his voice low but firm. Then breathe with me. In, out. That's all you have to do for now. We'll take care of the rest when it's time. The hearing was held in a small council chamber downtown, a plain room with gray walls and folding chairs. Reporters hovered near the back, their cameras already rolling. Elena's palms were slick as she stood beside Noah. The council chair, a woman with a stack of papers and tired eyes, adjusted her glasses. Ms. Park, you have 5 minutes. Elena stepped to the microphone. Her voice quivered at first, but the room was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat steadying her. 2 years ago, I worked for a company that promised privacy, she began. They told people their data was safe, that consent was clear, it wasn't. She spoke plainly about the hidden clauses, the gray-on-gray buttons, the profits made from people's trust. And then she said the words she'd been holding for months. They used fear to keep people silent, but I won't be quiet anymore. Gasps rippled through the crowd as she held up the printed documents. Behind her, Noah stood tall, arms crossed, not as her guard, but as her witness. For a moment, the room felt bigger than fear itself. Reporters began scribbling. The council chair leaned forward. Do you have names? She asked. Elena nodded. Yes, David Larkin, head of internal compliance, and others, but it started with him. A stir went through the room. One of the council members whispered to another, urgency crackling like electricity. And then, from the corner of her eye, Elena noticed movement near the exit. A man in a dark jacket standing half in shadow, watching. His expression was unreadable. When she met his gaze, he turned and slipped out the door. She looked back at Noah, who had already seen him. His face went still. The chair's voice cut through the noise. Ms. Park, thank you for your courage. The board will review your evidence. We'll be in touch. Elena nodded, stepping back. Her hands were trembling, but she'd done it. She had finally spoken where everyone could hear. Outside, flashes from cameras lit the steps. Questions flew, but Noah guided her through the noise, one hand steady at her back. She could still feel the echo of her words in her chest, fragile but alive. They reached the truck just as thunder cracked overhead. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder. Inside, the world narrowed to the sound of water hitting glass. Elena stared straight ahead, breath shallow. He was there, she whispered. The man from the train. Noah's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. I saw him. The rain came harder, drowning the noise of the city. Then, from behind them, headlights appeared in the rearview mirror, bright, steady, closing fast. Noah's eyes narrowed. Hold on, he said quietly, that this isn't over. Rain poured harder, streaking across the windshield like lines of panic. The headlights behind them stayed close, too close. Noah's hands tightened around the steering wheel, every muscle alert. The truck's old wipers squeaked against the glass, barely keeping up. Who is it? Elena whispered, turning in her seat. All she could see were beams of light and the vague shape of a dark sedan. Don't look back, Noah said, voice low and steady. Seatbelt on. She nodded. Yes. Good. He took a sharp turn onto a smaller street, tires hissing on the wet pavement. The sedan followed, matching speed. Elena's heart pounded so hard she could hear it over the rain. They're not trying to hide anymore, she said. Then they're scared, Noah replied. That's when people make mistakes. He turned again, this time into the narrow alley behind the diner. The kitchen lights still glowed faintly inside. He parked, breathing hard, watching the sedan roll past the mouth of the alley before disappearing down the main road. They sat in silence for a moment, the rain tapping on the roof like a clock counting their heartbeat. Elena exhaled shakily. You think they'll come back? Probably, he said. Not tonight. The diner door opened, and the smell of coffee and grilled onions drifted out. The night manager, a heavy-set man with a kind face, poked his head out. "You left your apron here, Reed," he said. "Everything okay?" Noah forced a half smile. "Yeah, just a rough drive." The man nodded, eyes flicking to Elena's pale face but not asking questions. "Come in, both of you. Dry off, I'll make a pot." Inside, the warmth felt unreal. Steam fogged the windows as they sat in a booth near the back. Elena's hands shook as she wrapped them around the coffee mug. "I thought I was done running," she said. "You are," Noah said. "This was just a reminder of why we have to keep standing." He pulled his phone from his pocket and showed her the video he'd taken at the council hearing. "You did good," he said softly. The whole speech, it's already online." Her eyes widened. "Online?" "Someone from the press posted it. It's spreading fast, comments, shares, everything." Elena's breath caught. "That means they'll come harder." "Maybe," he said, "but you're not in the dark anymore. The light's on them now." The door jingled as someone walked in, a woman with a press badge and a raincoat. She glanced around until she saw Elena. "Ms. Park, I'm Laura Chen from the Ledger. I was at the hearing." Elena tensed. "How did you find me?" Laura smiled faintly. "You left your card on the podium." She slid into the booth. "Listen, your story matters. That clip's getting traction. The council's opening an emergency review. They want your documents." Elena froze. "Now?" "Yes, tomorrow morning, they'll hold a special session." Noah leaned back. "She can't walk in there alone." "She won't," Laura said. "And the council already asked the police for protection. People are paying attention, finally." For the first time in days, the tension in the air shifted from fear to momentum. By dawn, the rain had stopped. They drove downtown again, the city still slick and shining. Outside the council building, reporters waited, cameras ready. The detective from before, Hale, stood near the door, nodding at them. "Glad you came," she said. "We've got eyes on the exits this time." Inside, the hearing room buzzed with low voices. Council members whispered among themselves. The projector at the front flickered to life as the press set up their gear. Laura connected the files Elena had sent overnight, the ones Noah had copied, carefully renamed, protected. The first slide appeared on the screen. Internal compliance memo, user consent visibility test. The room went still. Line after line appeared, email chains, code snippets, marketing notes. And there, in black and white, a line from David Larkin himself. "Lowering contrast by 10% reduces opt-out rates by 30%.
Gas broke out. One council member muttered, "Unbelievable." Another said, "This is deliberate deception." Elena stood in front of them all, trembling but grounded. "You asked for proof," she said. "That's what this is." Reporters scribbled frantically, cameras flashed. And then, near the back, someone stood, a man in a tailored gray suit, expression unreadable, David Larkin. He smirked, slow and smug. "You stole company property." He said loud enough for the cameras. "You've committed a federal offense, Ms. Park." Elena looked him straight in the eye. "I exposed one." The room erupted, questions flew, voices overlapping, the press pushing closer. David tried to speak again, but the council chair slammed her gavel. "Mr. Larkin, you're under investigation. Security will escort you out." He froze, disbelief flashing across his face as two officers stepped forward. Noah watched from the side, his chest tight with quiet pride. For months, Elena had been running from her own shadow. Now she was standing in full light, unflinching. As they left the chamber, Laura caught up with them. "You just changed a lot of lives," she said. Elena shook her head. "Not me, the truth did." Outside, the afternoon sun finally broke through the clouds. The light was soft and clean, reflecting off the wet sidewalks. Elena breathed in deeply, the air tasting like metal and freedom. Noah turned to her, smiling for the first time in what felt like forever. "Told you, machines break." She laughed, shaky but real. "Guess I was the piece that refused to move." They walked toward the truck, Maya running ahead with her sketchbook flapping in her hand. For the first time, Elena didn't look over her shoulder. But as Noah started the engine, a voice called from behind them, sharp, desperate. "Ms. Park!" They turned. A man was running down the courthouse steps, waving a phone. "The footage!" he shouted. You need to see this." On the screen was a live feed from the company's office building. Police lights flashed outside. Agents were walking employees out in handcuffs. Elena stared, disbelief softening into relief. "It's really happening," she whispered. "They're being held accountable." Noah rested a hand on her shoulder. "You did that." "No," she said. "We did." But just as they pulled onto the road, Elena's phone buzzed again. A new message from an unknown number.
Only 4 words this time. You're still not safe.
Her smile faded as she looked at the screen. The car grew quiet. Noah glanced at her, eyes narrowing. What is it? She turned the phone so he could see. And in that moment, as the road stretched ahead and sunlight broke through the rain, they both realized some battles don't end when the truth comes out. They just change shape. No one in that truck said a word, but deep down, they both knew. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. A week passed before either of them truly breathed again. The story had spread everywhere, on morning talk shows, podcasts, news sites that called her the woman who stood against silence. Elena's inbox flooded with messages from strangers, some thankful, some hateful, some just curious. It was too much noise to sort through, so she stopped trying. The company had issued statements, denials, apologies, all tangled together. David Larkin was under investigation, the board suspended him, pending further review. For most people, that was the end. But for Elena and Noah, it was only the middle. Because when the cameras turned away, real life still had to keep going. One quiet afternoon, Elena sat by the window with Maya, watching rain gather in the gutters. The little girl was coloring a garden full of huge flowers. "What kind are those?" Elena asked. "Daisies," Maya said. "But they look happy even when it rains." Elena smiled softly. "You're right, maybe that's what brave looks like." Noah came in from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. Detective Hale called. He said, They've traced the last text, the one that said you weren't safe. It came from an old server owned by Langley Security. Looks like whoever sent it was covering their tracks, but they're close to finding out who." Elena set down her tea. "So it's not over." He shrugged. "It never really is, but the worst part's behind us." She looked at him, realizing how different his voice sounded when he said us. That evening, they went downstairs to help Ms. Alvarez set up tables for the new Thursday night clinic. The old church basement smelled of coffee and fresh paint. Flyers were taped to the door, free legal help, no questions, no fees. Elena adjusted a stack of forms on one of the tables. "It's small," she said, but it's a start. Ms. Alvarez smiled. "All good things start small, mija, even courage." A few people began to trickle in, a single mother with tired eyes, a college student holding a crumpled notice from a landlord, a man in a hoodie who didn't meet anyone's gaze. Elena greeted each one gently, offering them a seat, listening first, advising second. She didn't feel like a hero, she just felt useful again. Maya sat near the back, drawing as always. When Elena walked past, the girl looked up. "You look less scared now," she said. Elena knelt beside her. "That's because I have better people around me now." Maya grinned. "Would I... like Daddy?" Elena's eyes softened. "Exactly like your dad." Later that night, after the last person left, Noah helped her pack up. "You're really building something here," he said, stacking chairs. "So are you," she said. "You could have turned away that night at the train station. Most people would have." He shrugged. "Maybe, but then I would have never met you or watched my kid learn that doing the right thing is worth the trouble." They stood there for a moment, quiet in the hum of the old fluorescent lights. The world outside was wet and gleaming again, the streetlights shining across puddles like tiny moons. When they got back to the apartment, Maya was already half asleep on the couch, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. Noah carried her to bed, covering her with the same blanket she'd had since she was a baby. When he came back, Elena was on the balcony, staring out at the city. "Do you miss it?" he asked softly. "The old life?" She thought for a while before answering. "Sometimes, the certainty, the order, but mostly I miss believing I could control everything. I don't think that's how life works anymore." He leaned against the railing beside her. "No, it's more like cooking," he said. "You mess up, start again, and if you keep showing up, something good comes out eventually." She laughed quietly. "You make it sound simple." "It's not," he said, "but it's honest." A small silence settled between them, the good kind, the kind filled with understanding instead of fear. Elena turned, studying his face in the soft city glow. "You've been my anchor through all this," she said. He smiled faintly. "Funny, I thought you were mine." They stood like that for a while, the night gentle around them. Down on the street, someone's radio played an old song about second chances. Then Elena's phone buzzed again. She froze, heart skipping. Noah tensed instantly. But when she looked at the screen, her breath caught for a different reason. It wasn't a threat, it was a message from the city's community office. The council voted unanimously to establish a permanent oversight program for data privacy. They're calling it the Lily Project. Elena covered her mouth, tears spilling before she could stop them. "They named it after her," she whispered. Noah smiled.
Maya's going to love that. Inside, the little girl stirred, her voice drowsy. Why are you crying? Elena laughed softly through her tears. Because good things still happen, sweetheart. Maya yawned, curling back into her pillow. Then draw them so they don't fade. Elena turned back to the night, breathing deeply. The city that had once felt cruel now looked almost kind, washed clean by the rain. The battles weren't gone, but they weren't hers alone anymore. And for the first time since that night at the train station, she didn't feel hunted, she felt home. The morning light spilled gently through the curtains, warm and quiet, the kind of light that doesn't just brighten a room, but softens it. Elena stood by the window, watching Maya chase her reflection across the floor, laughing freely. For a long time, that sound had felt like something she might never hear again. The world outside was still busy, noisy, and unpredictable. But inside, it finally felt like peace. Not the kind that comes from hiding, but the kind you build when you stop running. She had learned something through every storm, every fear, every long night when she thought she couldn't take one more step, that sometimes strength doesn't look like fighting, it looks like staying. It looks like showing up again after the world has already knocked you down. And love, real love, isn't about rescue or perfection. It's about patience. It's about being seen. It's about standing beside someone when the rest of the world walks away. Noah once told her, machines break all the time, usually because one piece refuses to move the way it's told. And she finally understood what he meant. The world doesn't change because of power or wealth. It changes when ordinary people refuse to move the way fear tells them to. Now, as the city hummed beneath the morning sun, Elena looked at her small, imperfect life and smiled. It wasn't what she used to dream of. It was better. It was real. Maybe that's the lesson we're meant to carry, that the things we run from are often the things that lead us home. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stay kind even when the world isn't. Do you believe that kindness and courage can rebuild a life more than power or wealth ever could? If this story touched your heart, thank you for being here, and for believing, like us, that quiet strength still matters.
We'll see you in the next story right here on Inspire Fathers Who.